Hello everybody and welcome back in. I am Kamari, and as you can see we are back in the tavern. This video will be covering my thoughts on the worst things about Path of Exile 2 through the campaign on normal and cruel difficulty. Now I'm just starting in the map, so I don't think it'd be fair to judge the end game just yet. I have about 50 hours in on my monk. I've completed the campaign on both normal and cruel difficulty. I've played extensively on both console and PC. Now let me preface this video by saying Path of Exile 2 is the greatest ARPG I've ever played. But in this video, I want to discuss some of the worst things in the game that I think should be changed or removed entirely. I'll make another video talking about all the things I love, but for now I want to give some of my honest feedback on some things that I think really need to be changed and that I hope the right person might see so some of these issues can be addressed. Now I want to start with one of the most frustrating interactions in Path of Exile 2. And it's actually a group of mechanics that I think when paired together create an extremely frustrating, punishing, and overall bad experience for the player. These mechanics are the revenge mechanics on death for mobs, loot disappearing on death, and the randomized respawn system. Individually, these mechanics might seem manageable, and they absolutely are in a vacuum where only one of them exists. But together, they create a feedback loop that punishes players in ways that feel unnecessary and on top of that, just plain out unfair. Here's a personal example to illustrate this. I was playing through Act 2, and after battling a group of tough, rare mobs, I finally saw my first legendary drop. This is the first legendary drop I've seen in the game. It's in Act 2 in the, I think it's the Valley of the Titans with the giant skeletons and the necromancers that resurrect the skeletons. And I finally see this legendary drop. It's one of those moments you dream about in an ARPG. The thrill of knowing you just earned something rare, that all of your hard work is finally going to pay off with this really powerful item. I was filled with excitement, ready to grab this legendary, check out its stats, see if it was going to be a great upgrade for me or even something I could trade for a bunch of exalted orbs that I could then trade for more loot. But before I could, I was unexpectedly killed by an after-death revenge mechanic by a mob. And that was with no clear warning or indicator. When these mobs, there's no way you can look at a mob before you kill them and know, hey, after this mob dies, I need to run away or I need to do this specific thing. There was nothing to give me any type of warning. I was instantly killed by this mechanic. So what happened is what should have been the most exciting moment of the game so far felt like a complete robbery. And to make matters worse, the game's randomized respawn mechanic means that when you return, the entire layout of mobs is changed. The area is filled with a new set of enemies, often with completely different abilities and challenges. So even if I wanted to re-strategize and take on that rare mob pack again, it was impossible. It's not just the loot that's gone, it's the whole opportunity to adapt, improve, and to overcome. This issue is even more pronounced when playing on console with a controller. Unlike PC players who can simply click their loot to secure it mid-combat, console players are at a massive disadvantage when it comes to this. The game always prioritizes targeting enemies over loot, and the interact button is bound to a combat ability. That means there's no reliable way to pick up loot while in the heat of battle. You can try to use the analog stick to manually target the loot, but it's wildly inconsistent. And because you're panicking and trying to grab this item while fighting, the risk of dying skyrockets. So what should be a moment of excitement of seeing this great item drop or this piece of currency that you need turns into a moment of fear and dread because now you know you have to survive until the end of this encounter or it's just going to be gone forever. You're going to get robbed of this thing that you need just because you couldn't not only kill this rare mob or this mob that dropped the loot, you couldn't then survive the onslaught of any other enemies in the area that were also trying to kill you. Now, I don't just want to give a complaint in case the right person does see this feedback. I want to also offer a solution here. One way to address these frustrations would be to make maps more consistent. When a player enters a map, the mobs on that map should be set in stone. This means that the enemies you face will stay the same throughout your time in that area, allowing you to plan and adapt. If you kill a rare mob, it should remain dead even if you die and respawn. This prevents players from abusing the system to farm rares while still giving you the opportunity to overcome tough challenges without losing progress. It's especially frustrating to almost kill a rare pack, only to die to either a revenge mechanic from one of the mobs, or just something you didn't see, to respawn and not even have the chance to go back and try to learn from that and fight them again. To avoid maps becoming cluttered with loot from repeated deaths and respawns, any loot below rare quality could despawn automatically when you die. This keeps the map manageable while ensuring players still have a chance to secure powerful rewards. It's a balance that respects the efforts players put into tough encounters without handing out free victories or overwhelming the game environment with pointless loot. By addressing the loot system specifically for controllers, The game could also make it easier for console players to enjoy a fair experience. Separating loot pickup from the combat ability button or improving targeting systems could go a long way to fixing this issue. Right now, the system feels like it unintentionally punishes console players, creating a disparity that's entirely avoidable. These changes would transform what currently feels like a punishing and unfair system into one that's challenging, rewarding, and most importantly, could be fun. Players should feel excitement and empowerment when they see good loot drop, not fear, dread, or terror that if they don't play absolutely perfectly, they'll die and lose any chance at ever picking up that loot. And now that I've talked about some of my frustrations with the loot and death mechanics and gear despawning and mobs despawning, let's shift gears into another major aspect of Path of Exile 2, and that's boss encounters. While this game does deliver some truly thrilling boss fights on normal difficulty, some of the best and most fun boss fights and mechanics that I've seen in an ARPG, the challenge begins to completely fade once you hit cruel difficulty, because at this point your build is probably kicking into full effect and you're getting a lot of really big power jumps, especially if you're trading. Bosses that initially felt like epic battles start to feel like mere formalities, and the mechanics that made these encounters engaging are often completely bypassed by pure damage output. These fights are intense and full of strategic depth, making every victory feel earned. However, as you progress into cruel difficulty, that sense of challenge diminishes entirely. What was once an epic encounter turns into a minor speed bump, and the mechanics that made the fight interesting are often ignored entirely. This shift isn't about lack of difficulty. POE 2 is still a very tough game, but for many builds, the bosses become so easily defeated that the sense of triumph completely vanishes. This is especially apparent after playing through multiple boss fights that are no longer require careful planning or adapting to new mechanics. I think a good potential solution for this problem would be to introduce a hard mode for bosses, allowing players to engage with the campaign's bosses at a higher level of difficulty. This would not affect loot drops or the game's economy in any way. It would simply offer a more challenging experience. And this is for those who want to push their builds and test their skills, or just engage with these challenging mechanics in a way that's meaningful. A hard mode option could be added for each boss, making them more challenging and unpredictable. You could add this option to the map or have it be a totem or something you click on before entering a boss arena. Players who've mastered the basics of the fight could opt for this mode, giving them an opportunity to experience a more intense version of the encounter. Additionally, a system that allows players to re-challenge story bosses after completing them could bring excitement back to older fights. Think of it like a ruthless boss mode, where bosses are made tougher but the mechanics and the fight patterns remain consistent. This would add replayability to the game and give players a chance to fully appreciate the bosses without feeling like they've outgrown them. Now, I do understand, and I want to make it clear that I understand that on full release, there won't be a cruel difficulty to the campaign. But where we're at in early access right now, there is a cruel difficulty, and that's something we really need to pay attention to, is the reality of the situation right now. A lot of people are trying the game out right now and not waiting for full release. If the game is not offering at least somewhat optimal fun experience for players right now, they will quit the game and never return. First impressions mean a lot in a very crowded landscape of video games. A lot of times you don't get that second chance even when the game launches. People will think, I've already done it, I've already played through it, I had my fun with the game, I'm worried about some other game that's out right now. And so it's really important for GGG to get this right and to keep the game engaging for people going through it right now on multiple characters or for the first time or whatever the case may be, to keep people engaged, to make them want to keep coming back. I also think this issue will persist even when Acts 4, 5, and 6 are added into early access and launch, because I think the issue is more around Act 3, around level 35 to 40 is when most builds do kick in. So even when there are Acts 4, 5, and 6 in the game, you will see bosses be pretty much one shot pretty easily and mechanics pretty much ignored, unless they ramp up boss difficulty a lot in Acts 4, 5, and 6, but then that puts players with a weaker build at a significant disadvantage. And that's why I think maybe a ruthless mode just for bosses might be a really important addition to the game to keep players playing stronger builds, or players who are better at theory crafting, or maybe players who got really lucky loot drops, engaged with the content. They notice that, hey, I'm destroying bosses without even thinking about it. Maybe I should try a ruthless boss on my next one. And it doesn't need to affect the gear. It doesn't need to drop better items or anything unless you want to add another progression system around that. knowing GGG another skill tree to it as well. That's fine. However you want to implement it, but just a way to have bosses, give bosses a way for the player to scale them with their strength. So, because a lot of players love challenging bosses. Going in one-shotting bosses does feel great, and that's why it should be optional. But a lot of players want to engage with these bosses. They don't want to kill a boss in 4 seconds. And a lot of builds can do that. It's the nature of this type of game where power becomes multiplicative and exponentially jumps very quickly. But I've harped on this a lot. I want to move on to the next thing I want to talk about. And so that brings me to the lack of information and player guidance in the game. So this is a significant issue that I want to touch on when it comes to PoE 2. And like I said, that's complete lack of direction when it comes to understanding how to engage with certain core systems. For instance, the game's trading system. This system is pretty vital to progression in PoE 2. It's bafflingly unclear, especially on console. To list items for trade, for example, on console, this is what you have to do. You have to, first of all, you have to buy a premium stash tab, which is never explained to you. You need to go to that stash tab. You need to right click on the analog stick. While holding right click, you need to press left on the D-pad, and then you need to set that stash tab to public. Then you have to manually go into each item and set a price for that item, which isn't a problem in itself because for new players who have no context on item values, this system is essential for progression, like I mentioned. The game it very much feels like this game is balanced around trading. And it feels like if you are not trading for gear with better resistances, plus gear that has stats that are good for your build, plus gear that just helps you power scale, you do fall behind. I felt like I was very, very weak with my character based on the loot drops I was getting until I started trading. And then I was getting currency items from the items I was selling, using those currency items to then trade for better gear. And it creates a circular flowing economy, which helps people gear. The game does not feel like it's balanced around just solo self-found, essentially. But most new players, especially those coming from games like Diablo 4, will never even realize that this is how trading works. Instead, they'll go through the entire campaign thinking they can't trade or feeling underpowered because they're just simply unaware of how important trading is to boost their character's power. I've seen this firsthand, like actually firsthand, with friends who are playing the game for the first time. And many of them are unintentionally, ironically playing solo self-found mode, and the only difference is they don't have the badge to go with it because they're just playing solo self-found without actually playing solo self-found. This severely limits their access to key gear. Without the understanding of how trading works, they're constantly re-rolling characters, or some of them just straight up quit the game because they felt like they were falling behind and that there must be some problem with the way they're playing, or they just don't understand the game enough to play it, and so they quit. The game never properly explains how to use its trading system, leaving many players in the dark about how to acquire key upgrades or wondering why they're feeling like they're falling behind. Another example of this lack of information is how PoE 2 handles certain mechanics, like crit chance and crit damage. Many passive nodes in the skill tree grant these bonuses, but the game never explains where or how they apply to your abilities. Another example for console. You have to navigate to the skill tab, click the analog stick on ability, and then click advanced settings or advanced something, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, to view the information. And then you can see crit chance, crit bonus damage, and all that, but it never explains that in the game. So you never, like a console player who didn't take the time to look that up or find it, because it's not something you'll really accidentally find, will never even know that different abilities have different crit chances. If they're coming from an MMO or something like that, they'll just think that it's like WoW or something where you just have a baseline crit chance. Like, oh, if I have a 20% crit chance, that means all of my abilities have a 20% crit chance, and that's not how the game works. Each ability has a base crit chance that goes up by the amount. Most of you watching this probably understand this, but new players don't. New players who aren't engaging with content for PoE 2 constantly don't understand this, and that is why it is essential for GGG to implement a good system that will explain this stuff to new players. For PC players, for this same example, there's a small arrow beside the ability to show info, but even this arrow is really easy to miss, and if you're not looking for it, you probably will never find it. The game never directs you to these features. It can leave new players frustrated and clueless. I'm not a fan of over-tutorializing games. I think games that are over-tutorialized and treat you like a baby are really off-putting to players. but there needs to be at least a basic level of direction for complex and nuanced mechanics like this. The game even has a toggle to disable all tutorials in the settings. So while you need to give tutorials to a certain extent to help players really understand the depth of your game, once they understand it, they can toggle off all tutorials, and it's not like they'll have to keep going through these same tutorials every time they play the game. It's clear that PoE 2 is a deep, intricate game, and while complexity is part of its charm, the lack of clear guidance on essential systems makes the experience unnecessarily difficult and even more artificially complex for new players. And one of the most frustrating issues regarding this is disparity in quality of life features between platforms. A glaring example of this is the trading feature on console. When you access the pause menu, there's an option on the pause menu for PlayStation and Xbox that says trading. Clicking this takes you directly to the PoE 2 trading website. This is an incredibly useful tool and feature. It streamlines the trading process and makes it accessible from within the game. But why the hell is this missing from the PC version? Trading is a core aspect of PoE 2, and it's odd that such a useful tool is only available on one platform. What makes this even more confusing is the game doesn't even mention or encourage players on how to use trading effectively. New players are left to discover this feature on their own, and many might never realize it exists. I only learned about it through my own curiosity while playing on console and then doing a bunch of my own research to find out how the whole trading system even works. If the game is going to rely so heavily on trading, it should at least make it easier to access and explain how it all works, no matter what platform you're playing on. And I'll go back to my anecdotal thing from earlier, where I said I know many players who are either quitting due to this or unintentionally playing solo self-found. They just don't understand, and I try to explain to them how trading works. And because I understand that GGG wants you to have to go to the website, they want you to have to message another player, they think this creates like a sense of like community. But let's be honest, we all know the experience is no different than an auction house. You go on the website, you send an automated message. That person invites you to a party, you open trade, you put in your item, they put in their thing, and then the trade is complete, and then you leave party. There's never like a community conversation. You're not building a relationship with people you're trading with. I'm going to be honest, and maybe this is a hot take, or maybe this is a cold take. I don't know. There just needs to be a vendor like the currency exchange. And the trade, basically everything that's on the trading website just needs to go in there. And if the buyout is one exalted, you click buyout, it sends that person one exalted into their tab where the item was, and then it pulls the item from their stash and puts it in your inventory. And it just needs to be that simple. And then there needs to be some kind of, at least if it's an NPC, people get curious, click on the NPC and discover it accidentally. But as it stands now, ironically, especially for PC players, there's almost no way to accidentally discover trading. On console, at least PlayStation, I did accidentally discover trading because I was like, oh, there's a trading button there. What does that do? And then I went and then I just kind of figured it out. If that trading option on the menu had not been there, I would have never found it. And how is that not on PC? How is this oversight possible, even in early access? How is that not in the game? I think this is a horrible oversight from GGG, and borderline unacceptable. Now, again, I do want to take this moment to acknowledge I think this is the greatest ARPG ever made, and it's not even close. But there are a lot of these issues. There are a lot of things that still need to be addressed and that still need to be fixed. They need to be fixed really quickly. The things I'm bringing up here are not all of the issues in the game, but I think they're the most egregious. And I think they need to be fixed the fastest because they will lead to a player exodus the quickest. I'm not saying the game's going to die. I'm not saying everyone's going to stop playing the game. I don't think that'll ever happen. But they will lead to less retention in new players, and making these things, correcting these issues I've brought up, whether it be the loot, whether it be revenge mechanics, whether it be rares despawning when you die, whether it be loot despawning when you die, whether it be not explaining systems, whether it be just not giving the player the tools to even understand what's going on with their build when they're using these passive skills. These are the things that will lead to new players leaving the quickest. It will lead to the biggest lack of retention, in my opinion, and I think they really need to be fixed. I don't want to ramble on too long about this, so I'm going to get to my conclusion here. So in conclusion, PoE 2 has a lot of deep, rewarding systems that make it an incredible game. But its lack of clear explanations and consistency between platforms creates unnecessary barriers for new players. Trading, one of the game's core features, is hidden behind obscure mechanics and critical gameplay features that are either poorly explained or missing entirely across platforms. These issues make the game more difficult to get into than it needs to be, and they could easily be improved by offering more direction, accessibility, and consistency. One more thing I want to bring up before I get to the outro, the official conclusion. I think it is terrible design philosophy that microtransactions on the same account do not carry over between platforms. And some of you may not have any idea what I'm talking about, so I'll explain it. I started playing on PS5 because I knew I was going to be playing the game a lot when it came out, and I didn't want to be stuck in my computer room in my office playing, not being around my family at all. So I said, you know what, I'm going to play this game on PS5. That way I can still be available. The game can be paused. I think that's amazing. You know, my kids need me, my family needs me, whatever. I can pause the game. I'm right there. You know, I'm still present. About 30 hours in, I was like, man, I really want to see how this plays on PC. So I go to my PC and I start playing. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get a full inventory with the loot. Let me go put this in my stash. Let me go put the items I want to trade in my premium stash. Let me go put my currency items in my currency stash. Those stash tabs are inaccessible on PC because I bought them on PlayStation. Same account, same character, inaccessible microtransactions. After some research, I found out that's how it works. It is the same account. It is the same character, but skins, pets, all this stuff, apparently, I haven't seen that firsthand. I've only seen stash tabs. When I go to my stash tabs, they're withdrawal only. I cannot deposit items. So what I end up having to do until I buy those stash tabs on PC again is deposit all my items into an empty tab, then go onto my PlayStation, log onto my POE2 account, withdraw all those items, and then put those items back into my stash tabs that I've bought. Which that's how people can bypass it easily. So it's like there's not even a point. Now I know it's a free-to-play game and it needs to make money. I understand that. So I have a solution for this too. On the store, just add a slightly more expensive tab that's cross-platform. I think that's the best solution. So these aren't actual prices. It's just off the top of my head, say a currency tab is 100 coins default. I'm not sure if that's true. 100 coins default. Rather than making a player pay 100 coins on, would effectively be like $10, I think, something like that. Whatever. Say it's $10. Effective money, $10. Rather than making me pay $10 on PlayStation, then $10 on PC, have one for $15, $17. Honestly, even if it's $20 and I only have to make the purchase one time, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with paying the same price. The price is not the issue. It's the fact that I've already bought this and now I have to buy it again. And that does have a psychological effect. Like I have to buy the same thing twice. Like what is this? Like, no. It has a psychological effect, and I think that is also a really big turnoff, especially for new players who might be playing this game on multiple platforms. Maybe someone starts on PC and they're like, oh, you know what, I want to, like me, they start on PlayStation. Oh, I want to see how this plays on PC. I want to check out the WASD, and they love it, and then they find out, oh, I've got to buy all this shit again. It's not good. Or the other way around, where someone starts playing it on PC, say they're the opposite of my situation. Like, man, I've been playing this game way too much on PC. I need to be around my family more. I'll start playing it on PlayStation because it's got cross progression, only to log in and find out they can't. They can't use those stash tabs. They can't use those items that, in their mind, I've already bought this. Adding that extra microtransaction into the store, just to have it, you've got like currency tab and then currency tab cross-platform, at least that way. If they just buy, like, oh, they think I'm only ever going to play this on PC, and then they decide to go to console, they had the option in the beginning to buy that cross-platform tab. So then it feels like, oh, you know what, that's on me. It doesn't feel like they're getting screwed over. And right now, that's how it feels. It's not a good feeling. I don't think that's a very good idea. And I think that does need to be changed. And I think that's the easiest solution. Just add all the microtransactions into or have like two different sections. The store is separated into sections anyways. Just another section in the store. Just name it cross-platform, and then have all the store items that can be cross-platform. And I think that's the easiest thing. But I don't want to ramble on about that too much. This video is already probably getting too long. So with everything that I've said, I absolutely love this game. I love Path of Exile 2. Despite these frustrations, the game's amazing combat, depth and complexity are what make it such an engaging game to play. So much fun. They keep me excited to keep playing, and they're the reason I make a video like this, because I want to see these things fixed. I want more players retained, and I want this game to succeed. And I can't wait to start progressing into the end game and experiencing everything that it has to offer. I also want to make more videos diving into aspects I love about the game, all the best things about the game, as well as discussing what's wrong with the end game, because I'm sure once I get into the end game, I've already seen a little bit of stuff online. I'm sure there's problems with the end game, so I'll probably make a video like this for the end game. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Path of Exile 2. What's your experience with the game so far? What kind of videos would you like to see from me in the future about Path of Exile 2? And what are your favorite and what do you think are the worst things in the game? Do you agree with me, disagree with me? Do you have other complaints? If you guys can give me some other things that you think are big issues, I'd be happy to make a part 2 to this. Let me know in the comments. If you do want to see more Path of Exile 2 content and probably some other content, some other types of content moving forward, please let me know. I'd love to make some more videos. Go ahead and subscribe if you want to see that. And I'll see you guys in the next video. I really hope you enjoyed this. And as usual, have a great week.